The rain was coming down in sheets when Xavier Rowen yanked his 4-year-old son's hood over his head and bent low to shield him with the only umbrella they had, an old, half-broken one missing 2 ribs. "Stay close to me, Toby," he said, gripping his son's small hand tightly and scanning the packed sidewalk for a break in the crowd. "We're almost at the bus stop." Toby looked up, water dripping down the sides of his bright blue backpack. "Daddy, my socks are wet." Xavier sighed, crouching to adjust the boy's shoes, soaked through from the puddles. "I know, buddy." "Just a little longer, okay?" The crowd parted for a split second, just enough for Xavier to spot a woman in a sharp black coat standing completely still at the edge of the sidewalk, her hair plastered to her face, no umbrella in sight. She wasn't flinching, just staring ahead like she didn't even notice the rain. He hesitated for half a second, then turned to Toby. "1 second, kiddo." He jogged over, raised his umbrella, and held it above her head. "You planning to melt out here or just testing the limits of patience?" Her eyes flicked to his, hazel, sharp, and surprised. "What? You're soaked," he said, shifting the umbrella to cover her better. "I've got half an umbrella and a kid who's already wet." "But you look like you stopped breathing 15 minutes ago." She blinked, then let out a soft laugh, unexpected, almost like she hadn't meant to. "I'm fine." "You're really not," he said. "Come stand over here." "We're heading to the bus stop, it's covered." She glanced at the little boy waiting with his SpongeBob backpack and tilted her head. "That your son?" "Yeah, Toby," he paused, then added, "I'm Xavier." "Jaclyn," she said. "Thank you." They walked together under the cramped umbrella, and Jaclyn leaned slightly closer to avoid getting drenched. Her coat clung to her slender frame, and her heels clicked awkwardly against the wet sidewalk. "Not exactly the best day for a walk in designer heels," Xavier commented. She looked down and smiled. "No, it's not." When they reached the covered bus stop, Toby immediately climbed onto the bench and began drawing little shapes in the fogged-up glass with his finger. Xavier shook the umbrella out and set it aside, glancing at Jaclyn. "You okay now?" he asked. Jaclyn met his eyes. "I wasn't, but now, yeah, I think I am." He frowned slightly. "You sure? You looked like you were about to walk into traffic back there," she exhaled. "Long day." Xavier didn't press. He just nodded, pulling out a granola bar from his coat and handing it to Toby. The boy took it with both hands and beamed. Jaclyn watched the two of them quietly. "You're doing this alone?" "Yeah," Xavier said. "Toby's mom left before he turned 1. Haven't seen her since." "I'm sorry, don't be." "He's the best thing that ever happened to me." Something shifted in Jaclyn's expression, but before she could respond, a sleek black town car pulled up to the curb. A man in a suit jumped out and opened the back door. "Miss Bellamy," the driver said. "I've been looking all over, I'm fine," she said quickly, stepping back. "I'll be right there." Xavier raised an eyebrow. "Bellamy, like Bellamy Industries?" Jaclyn hesitated. "Yeah, you're Jaclyn Bellamy," she nodded, brushing damp hair behind her ear. "CEO." "Surprise." Xavier let out a breath and ran a hand through his soaked hair. "Well, now I feel dumb for offering you a granola bar." Jaclyn laughed for real this time, and it was soft but warm. "No one's offered me anything in a long time without expecting something in return. You didn't look like you needed anything, except maybe a dry towel." She stepped closer again. "Can I see you again?" He blinked. "You're kidding." "I'm not. I'm a construction worker who's barely making rent, raising a kid by himself. You own a skyscraper." Jaclyn shrugged. "You shared your umbrella, that counts for something." He rubbed the back of his neck. "I don't date." "Not much time for it." "Then let's call it coffee," she said. "No pressure, just thank you." She scribbled something on a business card and handed it to him before turning back toward the car. Toby tugged on Xavier's sleeve. "Is she a princess?" Xavier stared after the luxury car pulling away. "I think she might be." The next day, Xavier stood outside a small cafe, same weather, slightly drier socks, wondering if he was completely out of his mind. Then she stepped out of a silver Bentley in heels and a dark red coat, her hair sleek and makeup light. She smiled like she didn't own half the city. "You came," she said. He shrugged. "Thought you might be messing with me." "I wasn't." Inside, she ordered 2 lattes and paid before he could even reach his wallet. "I don't like people paying for me," he said. "Get used to it," she replied, sipping her drink. I'm stubborn, he watched her, unsure what to make of her. I don't get it, he said finally. Why me? Jaclyn's smile faded a little. Because when I stood in the rain yesterday, I wasn't sure I could keep going. And then you showed up, handed me part of your umbrella, and didn't ask who I was or what I could do for you. He said nothing. I'm used to men who want power, she continued. You didn't even want my name. He leaned back in his chair. I won't pretend I'm not intimidated. I'm a guy who barely gets by some months. You probably haven't clipped a coupon in your life. She leaned forward. I don't care about any of that. I care that you're kind. I care that you love your son enough to stand in the rain with him and offer a stranger shelter. Xavier looked down at his coffee, unsure how to breathe around the heat building in his chest. Okay, he said after a long moment. This isn't a date, it's coffee. Jaclyn grinned. Sure, but it wasn't just coffee, because after that, there was dinner. Then another. She met Toby, brought him a small stuffed dinosaur, and sat on the floor to play Legos with him for an hour. And Xavier, who'd spent years keeping his heart locked up tight, started to feel something he hadn't in a long time, hope. You're not going to eat that? Jaclyn asked, eyes flicking toward the untouched salmon on Xavier's plate. He shook his head, folding his napkin slowly. I'm not used to ordering food that sounds like it came from a museum catalog. They sat across from each other in the rooftop restaurant of the Bellamy Hotel, where the chandelier above them shimmered like falling starlight and the skyline wrapped around them like a velvet curtain. Waiters moved with silent precision, and the table beside them had just been served something that arrived under a glass dome filled with smoke. Jaclyn leaned her chin on her hand. You ordered it because you didn't want to seem out of place. I ordered it because the only other thing I recognized was the pasta, and it had squid ink in it. She laughed, but softer this time. Next time I'll take you somewhere with real food, pancakes and coffee. No domes. Xavier pushed his plate aside and gave her a look. Why are you doing this? She didn't look away. Because I want to. I mean this, he gestured between them. You could date someone who owns a vineyard in France or runs a tech company out of Zurich. I fix drywall and worry about whether I can afford a new pair of boots for Toby before it snows. I'm not looking for someone to impress me with money. I've been around that long enough to know it doesn't mean anything if it's hollow underneath. He leaned back, folding his arms. You know what happens when people like me get near people like you? What? They get turned into stories, something to laugh about over champagne. Jaclyn's gaze steadied. I've never once laughed about you. And I don't plan to start. The silence between them stretched just long enough for the wind to pick up outside the glass. Then, without warning, Xavier stood. I need to get back, he said. Toby's with my neighbor. She's kind, but she's not a babysitter. Jaclyn stood too, not pressing. I'll have my driver take you. I rode the bus here. I'll ride it back. I'm not trying to make you feel like a project, Xavier. He paused at the elevator. Then stop putting me in places where I feel like one. The doors slid open and he stepped in without waiting. Jaclyn stood still as the metal doors closed between them. The next day, he didn't answer when she called, or the day after that. On the third day, she showed up at the construction site where he was working, wearing boots that were definitely not made for concrete dust. He didn't notice her at first. He was lifting panels onto a scaffold, sweat clinging to the back of his neck, sleeves rolled to his elbows, focus narrowed completely to the task at hand. Hard hat, grunted one of the older workers nearby, nodding toward Jaclyn. She pulled one out of a bag and slipped it on before striding toward Xavier. He turned when she was only a few feet away, and his face went still. You can't be here, he said, voice low. You've been ignoring me, for a reason. Then say it to my face. He dropped the tool in his hand and motioned to a side alley behind the site where the noise wasn't as deafening. Once they were alone, he crossed his arms. You don't belong here. I'm not here to make a scene. You already are one. She looked him directly in the eyes. I didn't ask you to change your life. I just asked for a chance to be part of it. You don't know what my life is. I know what you let me see. He exhaled roughly, pressing the heel of his hand to his forehead. You think this is simple? I've spent years building something steady for my son. One wrong move and it all crumbles. I'm not trying to take that away. You showing up here proves you don't get it. I'm a man who works with his hands, who eats dinner off scratched plates and prays the heater lasts another winter. I don't have room for heels and limousines and rooftop dinners. She stepped closer. Then we'll make space for something in between. He stared at her. You don't know how to be in between, Jaclyn. And you don't know what I'm willing to give up for something real. They stood in silence, the wind biting between them. Finally, Xavier said, "This isn't about whether I want you. I do. God help me, I do." Jaclyn's voice dropped. Then what is it about? It's about whether it's fair to bring someone like you into a life full of holes. I don't want you resenting me when the shine wears off. She reached into her coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He hesitated, then took it. It was a drawing, colored pencil. A dinosaur with sunglasses, holding hands with a stick figure that said "Me and Miss Jaclyn." "Toby made it," she said. "Yesterday, I didn't ask him to." Xavier looked down at the drawing, throat tight. "He doesn't need perfection, he just needs love," she added. He folded the paper carefully, reverently. "I'll think about it." Her voice was quiet. "I hope you do." She left without another word. That night, Xavier sat on the worn couch in his apartment, the drawing resting on his lap. Toby was asleep in the next room, soft breathing muffled by the cracked door, the quiet wrapped around him like a second skin. He picked up his phone. "Jaclyn," he said when she answered, "you said pancakes and coffee." "I did. Tomorrow morning, just us, no drivers. No suits." There was a pause. "I'll be there." And this time he believed her. The morning air was crisp and the kind of quiet that only existed just after sunrise. The diner sat tucked between a laundromat and a pawn shop, its neon sign half lit and buzzing faintly. Inside, the scent of frying butter and brewed coffee wrapped around Xavier the minute he pushed the door open. Jaclyn was already there, sitting in a booth by the window, dressed in jeans and a navy blue sweater, her hair pulled back in a loose braid. She looked up as he entered, and for the first time since he'd met her, she looked like she had nothing to prove. "You weren't kidding," she said, sliding a menu toward him. "This place smells like heart disease, and I love it." He slid into the seat across from her, tugging off his jacket. "You sure no one's going to recognize you here? If they do, they'll assume I'm scouting properties for redevelopment," she said, picking up her coffee. "But no one's paying attention." "Good," he said. "Because I don't want to be a headline." The waitress came by, poured him a cup of coffee without asking, and took their orders. Jaclyn asked for blueberry pancakes and extra butter. Xavier ordered a breakfast sandwich and hash browns. As the waitress left, Jaclyn leaned her arms on the table. "So, I think we skipped a few chapters." Xavier nodded slowly. "Yeah, probably. I want to know what you wanted to be before life told you what you had to be." He blinked at the question. "That's not what I expected." Her voice stayed even. "I'm not here to waste time pretending I want small talk." He stared out the window for a beat, then looked back at her. "I wanted to be a mechanical engineer, not because I thought I'd be rich, but because I liked figuring out how things worked. Machines don't lie, they break and you fix them. Simple. What happened? My dad got sick. I dropped out to take care of him. By the time I could even think about going back, Toby came along, and then it wasn't about what I wanted anymore." Jaclyn didn't rush to respond. Instead, she reached into her tote bag and pulled out a small, leather-bound notebook. She opened it, scribbled something, then tore the page free and slid it across the table. He picked it up. An address, under it, she'd written, "Night classes, certified program, 3 nights a week. Childcare provided." He blinked. "What is this? You said you wanted to fix things. I believe you." Her voice didn't waver. "You've been fixing everything around you except yourself." Xavier set the paper down carefully. "You don't even know if I'm good at it. I know you've rebuilt your life from pieces more than once. That's enough proof for me." The waitress returned with their plates, setting them down with a cheerful "enjoy" before walking away. Xavier stared at the food, then at Jaclyn's calm expression. "I can't afford tuition," he said quietly. "You will," she said. "I'm not offering to pay for it, but I know people who fund scholarships for working parents. I'll make a call, that's all." He picked up his fork but didn't eat. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I think you've spent too long convincing yourself that dreaming is a luxury." She leaned forward. "It's not, it's survival." He looked down at the pancakes on her plate. "You always talk like that, only when I mean it." They ate in silence for a few minutes. the clatter of plates and quiet hum of conversation around them filling the space. Finally, he glanced over. "You ever dream of something different?" Jaclyn chewed slowly, then nodded. "I wanted to be a photojournalist when I was younger, travel the world, capture real things." "What stopped you?" "My father said it wasn't a future, said I'd learn to appreciate responsibility." "Did you?" She smiled tightly. "No, I learned how to wear responsibility like armor." He nodded. "You ever think about walking away from it?" "Every time I walk into that office and people bow their heads like I'm royalty, yeah, but I built it. I can't just burn it down." Xavier tapped the edge of his cup. "But you could step back." Her eyes flicked to his. "I've been thinking about it." He didn't respond right away. Then, "Because of me." "No, because of me," she said. "But you reminded me that life's too short to live it like you're waiting for permission." He sat back, processing. "So what happens if I go to those classes?" 3 nights a week, I'm gone. I'm working full-time. Toby needs someone." Jaclyn reached into her bag again, pulled out another paper and handed it over. This one had a name and number. "She's a retired elementary teacher, lives 2 floors above you. I met her when I picked up Toby's drawing last week. She said she'd be happy to help in the evenings if you ever needed it." Xavier stared at the paper, then at her. "You planned all this?" "No," she said. "I just didn't want to sit back and watch you throw away something that could change everything." He folded the paper and tucked it into his jacket pocket. "You're dangerous." "I know," she said. "And I'm not sorry." Later that week, the first night of class, Xavier stood outside the building longer than necessary. The lights inside glowed warm, and through the windows he could see other students chatting, waiting for the instructor. He took a breath, ran a hand through his hair, and stepped inside. By the time the class ended, his hands were covered in graphite and his head buzzed with equations he hadn't touched in years. But something inside him felt alive again. Outside, Jaclyn stood leaning against a lamppost, holding 2 cups of coffee. He stopped short. "You waited." She handed him one of the cups. "You looked like you'd need caffeine. How long were you standing there?" "Long enough to see you walk out smiling." He took a sip, letting the warmth settle in his chest. "You always this persistent?" "Only when something matters." He looked at her, the city lights catching in her hair, her eyes clear under the night sky. "I'm not used to people staying," he said. She stepped closer. "Then let me be the first." Xavier adjusted the collar of his shirt for the 3rd time as he stared at his reflection in the hallway mirror. The shirt was new to him. He'd picked it up from a thrift store across town. It was pressed and clean, and for once, he didn't look like he'd just come off a shift with drywall dust on his neck. Behind him, Toby came barreling down the hallway in socks, holding a cardboard crown on his head. "Miss Evelyn says I'm king of dinosaurs tonight," he declared proudly, hopping in front of Xavier. "You sure she didn't say bedtime?" Xavier asked, crouching to fix the crown, which had already begun to slip sideways. "She said I could stay up until you leave, and then I have to brush my teeth." "Promise?" Evelyn, the retired teacher from 2 floors up, appeared in the doorway with a knowing look. "Don't worry, he'll be in bed before the 2nd commercial break." Xavier smiled gratefully. "Thank you again. I know it's not always easy keeping up with him. He's got more energy than a wind turbine," she said, patting Toby's head. "But he's a good boy. Go on, enjoy your night." Xavier knelt and hugged his son tightly. "Be good for Miss Evelyn. I'll see you in the morning." Toby leaned close. "Is this a date with the princess?" Xavier paused. "Yeah, I guess it is." He found Jaclyn waiting outside in a car that wasn't a town car or a Bentley. It was an old station wagon. The paint was chipped, the radio was stuck on 1 volume, and there was a fuzzy dice charm hanging from the rearview mirror. She leaned across to open the passenger door. "Thought I'd give your world a try tonight." He slid in and stared at her. "Where did you even find this?" "My cousin's. She's in Europe for a month. Figured it was time I tried something that didn't come with a driver." Jaclyn drove them to the edge of the city, where the skyline gave way to trees and quiet. They parked near a hill that overlooked the river, the water catching the moonlight in long glints. "I used to come here when I needed to breathe," Xavier said, stepping out and zipping his jacket. "Before Toby, before everything." Jaclyn joined him, the wind tugging at her scarf. "Why'd you stop?" "Didn't feel like I deserved quiet anymore." "You do," she said softly. "You've earned it." They stood there for a long time, the sounds of the city distant behind them. Jaclyn turned toward him, her eyes serious. "I've made a decision," she said. "I'm stepping down," he blinked. "From your company." "Not entirely. I'm staying on the board, but I've hired someone to take over the day-to-day, someone I trust. I want a life that isn't built around meetings and mergers." He studied her face. "You sure that's everything you built?" "And I'm proud of it," she said. "But I don't want to spend the next 20 years watching my life through glass walls. I want real things, people, moments." He hesitated. "Does that include me?" Her hand found his. "It started with you." The wind picked up and he turned to face her fully. "I've been trying to find the right time to say this, but I think maybe there isn't one. Say it anyway. I've never let anyone in like this, not since everything went sideways, and you didn't just show up. You stayed, you saw the mess and didn't run." Her voice was quiet. "I fell in love with the man who stood in the rain and didn't ask for anything, and I fell harder when I saw how deeply he loved his son." He stepped closer. "I don't have much, but what I do have, I'd give you all of it." Jaclyn reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He stared at it. "What's that?" "Don't panic," she said. "It's not a ring." She opened it. Inside, nestled in satin, was a silver key. He looked at her confused. "It's not to a penthouse or a yacht," she said. "It's to a small townhouse I bought. It's got a backyard, a second bedroom, and it's 15 minutes from your son's school. I'm not asking you to move in. I'm asking you to build something with me if and when you're ready." He closed the box gently and slid it into his pocket. "I don't need time." Jaclyn froze. "I want that life. With you, with Toby. I want to wake up and hear you arguing with the toaster and laughing with him in the hallway. I want all of it." Her eyes filled, but she didn't look away. "Then let's start now." He took her face in his hands and kissed her, slow and certain, like a man who had finally stopped running from the weight of wanting. Weeks passed, and the townhouse filled with signs of life. Toby's drawings lined the fridge. Jaclyn's shoes sat beside Xavier's boots by the door. They took turns making breakfast, burning toast and laughing when the smoke alarm chirped. One evening, after the last box was unpacked and Toby was asleep under a blanket of plastic dinosaurs, Jaclyn curled beside Xavier on the couch. "Do you still think I'm a story someone would laugh about over champagne?" He kissed her temple. "No, I think you're the story I'll spend the rest of my life telling." She smiled into his shoulder. "Good. Because I've got years of chapters left." And for the first time in a long time, Xavier believed in happy endings. Because the woman who ruled skyscrapers and boardrooms had chosen a man with calloused hands and a soft heart, and together, they built something stronger than either of them had ever dared to hope for. Love, real love, had found them in the rain, under half an umbrella, where neither of them had been looking. The early evening sun cast a golden blur through the bare windows of the newly painted living room, where the scent of fresh pine floors still lingered beneath the subtle traces of lemon cleaner. Jaclyn stood barefoot, holding a measuring tape in one hand and a folded piece of paper in the other. She turned slowly, eyeing the wall opposite the fireplace, then called toward the hallway. "Xavier, do you still want the bookshelf on this wall or the one near the window?" His voice echoed back from the bedroom. "Did we already move it once?" "Yes." "And you hated it." He appeared in the doorway, wearing paint-flecked jeans and a faded t-shirt she hadn't seen before. "That's because it blocked the light." "Then we leave it here," she said, bending to mark the wall. "But if you change your mind again, you're moving it alone." He crossed the room and draped an arm around her waist. "Deal, but only if you agree to let me build that reading nook you keep talking about." "In the attic," he nodded. "I found reclaimed wood panels at the job site. They're letting me take them off the lot." She leaned against his chest. "You're really going to build it, walls, cushions, and all? You said you've never had a place to sit still." Her voice was quieter now. "I haven't. You do now." The front door creaked open and Evelyn stepped inside, holding Toby's hand. He rushed across the room, a blur of green dinosaur-patterned overalls, and launched himself into Jaclyn's arms. "We saw ducks. One of them tried to chase me." Jaclyn laughed, catching him mid-jump. "Did you chase it back?" "I didn't want to scare it," he said seriously. "Miss Evelyn says ducks have feelings." Xavier ruffled his son's hair. "She's right." Evelyn smiled from the archway. I'll let you three settle in. Dinner's defrosting on the counter. I'll stop by tomorrow to help with the garden boxes. Jaclyn followed her to the door. Thank you for everything. Evelyn waved the thanks away. Your family now. After she left, Toby ran to the box labeled toys and began digging through it like a miner on a mission. Xavier watched him for a moment, then turned to Jaclyn. Tomorrow's the ceremony, he said. She nodded. I know. You sure you want to go? She gave him a look. I'm not missing your graduation, he exhaled slowly. I thought I'd never finish anything again. You didn't just finish, she said. You rebuilt. The next day, the auditorium buzzed with quiet conversation and rustling programs. Xavier sat in the second row, wearing a navy button-up, and his name stitched onto a certificate on the table in front of him. Jaclyn sat beside Toby, who wore a tiny dress shirt and matching navy suspenders. When Xavier's name was called, he walked to the stage to polite applause. But when he turned to face the crowd, his eyes found Jaclyn's, and she stood up clapping louder than anyone, with Toby stomping beside her. After the ceremony, he found them outside beneath the trees, where the breeze carried a gentle coolness. You looked like you were going to pass out, Jaclyn teased. I might have, he said. But then I saw you. She touched the edge of his collar. You did it. Not alone. He pulled her close and kissed her, the sunlight catching the edges of her hair as if even the world was holding its breath. Later that week, they hosted their first dinner at home. The table was mismatched, half folding chairs, half stools, but the food was warm, and the laughter was louder than anything the walls had ever heard. Neighbors came. Evelyn brought a peach cobbler. Xavier grilled outside. Jaclyn wore an apron for the first time in her life and managed to burn only one pan. After everyone left and Toby was asleep, they curled up on the couch together. You ever think it would look like this? She asked. He kissed the top of her head. Never. But I wouldn't change a thing. She glanced at the fireplace mantel, where a framed photo of the three of them now sat. I've been offered a fellowship, teaching business ethics at a local college, 1 evening a week. He looked over, surprised. You're going to take it? I think I am, she said. It feels grounded, real, he smiled. Sounds like we're finding our rhythm. I don't need skyscrapers anymore, she whispered. I just want this, you, him, a home where we can breathe. Xavier stood and walked into the hallway. When he returned, he held a small, square box. Not velvet this time, wooden, hand-carved. Jaclyn sat up slowly. What is that? He opened it, revealing a ring, simple, elegant, a single emerald stone set in gold. I didn't buy this from some designer, he said. I found the stone at the bottom of a toolbox my dad left behind. I had it cleaned. Cut, and I made the band myself. Her eyes welled, and she didn't speak. I kept thinking I had to wait until everything was perfect, he continued. But life isn't about perfect. It's about choosing each other, every day, even when it rains. She laughed through the tears. You really made this, he nodded. And I want to spend the rest of my life making things with you. Will you marry me, Jaclyn Bellamy? She didn't hesitate. Yes, they kissed, and the ring slipped onto her finger like it had always belonged there. The seasons turned. Xavier opened his own small workshop after finishing his certification. Jaclyn taught her first semester and found she liked the sound of honest questions more than boardroom silence. Toby started kindergarten, and every Friday night, they had pancakes for dinner, burnt edges and all. One spring morning, with sun spilling across the kitchen floor and Toby building a Lego tower in his pajamas, Jaclyn leaned against the counter and watched Xavier pour coffee. You know, she said, you're not the only one who rebuilt something. He looked up. No, I rebuilt myself too. From the moment you handed me half of that umbrella, he crossed the room and kissed her forehead. Best thing I ever gave away. Their life was not perfect, but it was full, honest, shared. And in every corner of the home they made together, love lived quietly and completely, needing no grand gestures anymore, just each other. Always.